with that, I would turn the floor over to Bill Brooks, the former superintendent of Winfield State Hospital.
I'm glad to be here. I see so many friends that I've worked with, and I thought I'd take us back. Rocky sent me two or three emails about staying on the schedule. But, this is really a pleasure for me. I look around and I see the people that enrich all of our lives. And I think that our special people, most of us in this room, have a real investment, and we finally begin to recognize them as individuals that could make choices. I just want to go back just a little ways about what happened in Kansas just a little while back. In the late 90s, there was a trend going around the country about deinstitutionalization. And that trend, if you don't know much about it, a lot of you in this room may not have much of a history of what was going on in Kansas at that time. But that deinstitutionalization meant that the belief that developmental disabled people had a right to live in their communities rather than in state institutions. Well, that trend hit Kansas also, because back in the mid-90s, while we were talking about institutions, state institutions, the state of Kansas made a decision to close one of their state institutions, and that was after many sessions, a lot of consideration and judgment, and that decision happened to fall on Winfield State Hospital, and that was in 1995 that they made that decision. And we were, I don't know, you work at an institution that's been open since 1881, and you work with people, and you think you build up this attitude that nobody else can do this, what you're doing, and I think we had a good institution. I think if you look at the care and treatment that was being given at that point in time, we were pretty high on the list nationally about the kind of care and treatment. But we've always been loyal to our consumers, to our parents and our guardians, and to our state officials. When we're given a job to do, that we do the best we can with it. And out of this decision to close Winfield, the legislature gave us a mandate to do that in 3 years. And it's kind of printed in up here on my forehead. December 31, 1998 was the date that they wanted us to close. And that was, well, you might look at that date and think, well, that's 3 years. It might seem like a long time. But let me tell you what, those months went by very fast. We spent hours working with SRS, other state officials, parent teachers, not parent teachers, but parent organizations, local organizations, residents, families, everybody we could find to help us decide, wow, we've got to do this, and we've got to do this in 3 years. And when you have a job to do and you say you got to do it in 3 years, you could become a little lax and decide, oh, I got a lot of time to do that. No, folks, it doesn't work that way, because something in my head kept telling me that, we were getting a lot of advice. I said, okay, just stay cool, let these people tell you what to do, and pick out the parts that work and go on with what you have to do. And that's what we developed what we call a closure plan. And I just want to tell you some of the things we had to consider on that closure plan, and it won't take long. But one of the key things to us in closing that facility was that we stayed in continuous communication with residents, parents, and guardians throughout the entire process. We needed outside advice. So we created an advisory committee consistent of all the professionals and everybody you could think of that would have anything to do with this, and those that didn't, because we really did need the critics also. And probably one of the real keys for us was that SRS agreed. I'm glad they did. They gave us a job. They agreed that they would act as our public relations officer. And I don't want anybody to underestimate that, because I want to tell you something. That allowed us to work full-time, not have to answer the telephone on our progress of closing that facility. And that was very, very important to us. One of the things we had to think about, okay, we're moving an institution into the community. We needed to create a special committee to study a key thing called natural supports. Natural supports are the supports in the community that you and I or anybody else would need, because we needed to know what was out there, what needed to be developed, and so we could make this transition. We never questioned afterwards the closure of this facility. I shouldn't say we, I said most of us didn't, because there was a lot of anxiety and a lot of resentment to doing this. But the last piece of our job was that we needed to create a transition placement group to take the consumers from our facility to their new environments, so they would have an idea of what was going to take place. And folks, I just want you to know we worked diligently over those 36 months, and we came up with successful closure. We missed it by a couple of weeks. And I must say this because it wasn't, but our community service providers and CCL was one of the leaders, and our other supports, they were the one that saved us from going any farther past that mandate, because we had to wait about 2 weeks into January before we could take. And I want to make this a quick statement. I just want you all to think about it. My staff and I were standing on the hill, and I don't want anybody to misunderstand what I'm saying, when the last bus of residents drove off the hill. They left just before lunch. And I want to tell you something. You know, I'm a senior worker with the state. I worked the state in institutions for 40 years. And when those last state residents left that campus, our reason for being there was gone. We had all the buildings, we had all the other stuff, we had everything. We were no longer a 24/7 agency, we were just like any other business, because the reason we were there just went down the hill. And I want to tell you something, they deserve to. I just want to say that. You know, it was a pretty emotional and traumatic experience for us, but because we really tried to do what we could. But the page is turned now. I still have people asking me, was closure right for Winfield? You know, right after we did that, I don't know, the answer was probably, I don't know what, I didn't feel comfortable about it, but we were too busy to really have much discussion about it. But these last 7 years is what I want to talk about just for a minute. I'm a director in Cowley County, CDO, some of you might recognize that by title, where some of our same consumers from Winfield State Hospital are now in residence. And I want to tell you something. We spent lots of y'all's money at Winfield trying to make that not just home-like, but a community home-like environment. And we made it better, folks, but it doesn't work. You know, I can stand here and tell you an institution is not a home. An institution is an institution. That's what it is. And our people that are in institutions have a right to make those choices, just like you and I. I want you to know that their lives are better. I want to tell you one other thing. I have an opportunity to track, at least in Cowley County. We heard all kinds of stories about what would happen to our medically fragile people, and they couldn't be cared for in the community. And I'm going to put a plug in for our community service providers, just like all of the others all over the state of Kansas. They're doing an excellent job of caring for our people. They're doing an excellent job of caring for our people. The death rate at the state hospital most of the time ran close to double digits. Since our people have moved into the community, that figure, and this is a blessing, has been a single digit every year they've been out of that institution, except 2 years ago. And that's some of those same people that we said that they couldn't make it in the community. You know, they have the right to choose to live their lives. They really do. And the thing that I always wondered as superintendent of that agency, I wonder what they would choose to do if we just asked them sometime. You know, rather than those mandated trips and things that they have to make. And, you know, that still happens, I'm sure, folks, in an institution. You have a right to those choices. We're talking about now a bill out there that will do away with the waiting list. There are developmentally disabled people here in Kansas that need that same opportunity. There are people in institutions that need that same opportunity. Legislators or whoever listening, it's the best money we can spend is to try to give our folks that are in institutions and those that are on waiting lists an opportunity to enjoy those rights that you and I have to enjoy. Yes, it's tough out there, but they need to have the right for that opportunity. And with that, I want to tell you, when you have an opportunity to vote to do away with the waiting list, I would certainly hope at some point it would be a mandate like it was when you voted to close our institution. And if you want to see something move, make it a mandate and give it a date, and then something will happen. I want to introduce at this point Sharon Bird. We're running a little behind my time. Sharon Bird was the chairperson of our parent organization. And I can't tell you the importance of that parent organization because let me tell you what, we fought hard against closing that facility. We fought hard. But when the decision was made and we saw that we had to do it, this was one of the organizations that have continued since that facility closed to support our special people, really. And I want to tell you, and I want to say this publicly before her, we appreciate it, and I see the fruits of their work and the other agencies in Cowley County all the time. I owe the special people my life because, you know, I know what their needs are. They know what my needs are. But you folks that are working in institutions, don't get into the comfort zone because, you know, institutions were not opened in the first place to become permanent homes for people. They were supposed to be transitional. And you ought to have a little discomfort, work yourself out of a job, and then go get the next challenge.